This is NC Spin, an unrehearsed discussion on issues of interest to North Carolinians. Now, here is your moderator, Tom Campbell.
Welcome. You've heard and read the spin the media and the politicians have put on the issues of the day. To get the correct spin on what's going on in North Carolina, let's introduce you to our panel of experts. They include former Representative Connie Wilson, Chris Fitzsimon from NC Policy Watch, Syndicated columnist and author John Hood, and former Lieutenant Governor and good friend Dennis Wicker. Welcome to what we believe is going to be an informative show. We begin by talking about Governor McCrory's executive order regarding HB 2, his proposal to raise teacher pay to an average of $50,000 per year, and we include discussions on whether it's time to raise unemployment benefits. And as always, we'll ask the panel to tell us something we don't know. Let's get started. The firestorm and reactions continue over HB 2, the so-called bathroom bill, following the announcement by Deutsche Bank that they had put on hold a 250 job expansion in Cary. Governor McCrory took action, announcing an executive order with 5 points. It maintains gender-specific facilities in government buildings and schools, affirms that the private sector can establish its own restroom policies, and has the right to establish non-discrimination policies for its own employees. It further expands the state's employment policy to cover sexual orientation and gender identity, and the governor promises to ask lawmakers to reinstate the right to sue in state court for discrimination. Connie, what's your reaction to Governor McCrory's executive orders? Is this going to calm the waters?
I don't believe it will immediately calm the waters, but I do believe it was a very smart public relations move because, like you were mentioning, this firestorm that's spinning out of control, there's a lot of misinformation and something had to be done to kind of stop the debate and change the focus. And that's what a governor can do with an executive order. It's well written. Most of what is in there is in House Bill 2, so there's really not much of a change in policy that's going on, but it clears up what really is being said with House Bill 2 and where North Carolina is. I don't believe it's going to help quiet the waters right now within the media over House Bill 2 because the folk that are pushing this issue are pushing it more than for bathrooms. It really is that North Carolina is a battleground state and they want to drive this wedge with the voters as long as they can through November.
Dennis, I was sort of interested in the reaction and the response to this from Reverend William Barber in the state NAACP, who, by the way, calls this Hate Bill 2 instead of HB 2. But he says he questions whether or not the governor actually has the authority to issue this executive order as far-reaching as it is. You've been in that power. What do you think?
Well, I think there is a real question as to whether or not this executive order has any real legal effect at all. And based on some conversations I've had with some constitutional lawyers, I know enough about constitutional law to be a little dangerous. But the answer I get is that it has not much effect, that the statute that they passed back in a week or two ago is still in the books, and that is going to be the law of the land until the legislature comes in and repeals it.
Well, and the governor wants to do that, John.
Well, what the governor did in the executive order, he clearly has the authority to do, which is to set employment policies, ask all the cabinets, ask all the agencies. That's an administrative thing. The part the lawyers may be talking about, I guess, Dennis, is part of the executive order is a request to the legislature to restore access to state courts. Now, of course, that's not something the governor can order. That is really a request embedded in an executive order. The legislature will have to act on that. I think it's at least possible they will do so. That's the one element of House Bill 2 that didn't get the initial attention because most of the discussion was about bathrooms, where frankly the governor and the legislature are with public opinion. But on the state court access, that got a lot more sticky, and it ended up being really what that ended up being is not a conflict about discrimination, but a conflict between plaintiffs' attorneys and defense attorneys. That's what that's been.
And the net effect of all of that, Chris, was it was going to drastically reduce the number of lawsuits.
Well, there's only one other state in the country that does not allow workers who are illegally fired based on race, religion, things that were already in the common law, the non-discrimination law, to file suit under state court. Now it's North Carolina and Mississippi. I think there's several things about the governor's order, but just on this point, This is an example of two things. One is, why in the world did we do this in 9 hours and not have any hearings or notice this was coming? Nobody saw this law. Nobody knew what was going on. And number two, why did the governor sign the bill the same night if he had all these objections? A real leader, the Charlotte ordinance didn't go into effect for 10 more days or 8 more days. He could have said, this goes way too far. I want to talk about bathrooms. I'll veto it, call you back tomorrow, and you'll pass a bill that just does one thing. Instead, I think that would have been a bad idea, the bill, but it would have not started this national firestorm. And now he's trying to, after the fact, do this. And by the way, he still hasn't had a press conference about this. He's jumped into a boat to get away from the media. He's hid in a principal's office to get away from the media. He released a video about this. He had a special announcement about the FBI director, refused to take any questions about it. So clearly he's uncomfortable talking about it. The one interview he did...
I take it you're not real thrilled with this.
Well, I'm just saying I think the governor deserves to face the reporters and face the questions. And one more quick point about that. One of the things he said in the one interview he did do was, he said the state has no business setting personnel policy at private corporations. When he was asked, shouldn't all gay and lesbian people in North Carolina have the same protection that you have on race and religion? And he said it's not the state's place. Well, of course it is. We already do that. You can't be fired because you're African American or Jewish or Christian. And what we need to get to is a point where you can't be fired because you're gay or lesbian. And I think that's one of the things that people are looking for.
Dennis, you and Connie both have served in the legislature for a number of years. Let's focus on this request that the governor has made for the legislature to come back and change that provision about being able to sue in state courts. Given what you know about this legislature, tell us what you rate the chances of that getting done in this short session. Connie, I'll start with you.
I think there might be a possibility of some tweaking on that section. I don't think it would be a wholesale change going back to the old way, but I'd give it about 60%.
Dennis?
Well, this is morphed from a local act to a social issue, and now it's turned into an economic issue.
And mostly a political issue.
And now a political issue. And I really think that if the legislature's sensitive and listening to what's going on around us, especially in economic development, I would strongly urge them to roll back the bill in terms of the discriminatory actions being repealed. I think that's what's got everybody riled up, and I would suggest that they might come back and take a real hard look at that. I would urge them to do it.
Chris, okay, if they do strike that section of the law, will the protest die down?
Oh, I don't think so, because there's still protections for, if the governor believes it is it's wrong to fire somebody who works for state government because they're gay, then why is it not wrong for anybody in North Carolina to be fired if they're gay? I think that's one of the big deals. I think the bathroom thing is still a huge contentious issue. And getting back to the employment thing, it's not going to be that easy. Two very prominent Republican lawyers, Tom Farr and Phil Strzok, who have represented the Republican Party many times and are now representing them in court, argued in the media that this employment change was a good thing and that we should eliminate the right to sue in state court. So it's not a done deal by any means, and I'm not as optimistic as Connie that the legislature is going to change it, and I think that would be a travesty.
All right, so John, how might this affect the November 8 elections, given all that's going on with it? What could be the impact here?
Well, the biggest impact on the election right now is just that it's sucking up all the oxygen in the room. As I said, the governor of the legislature, they have some elements of House Bill 2 that are popular with the public, some that are not popular with the public. It's not obvious yet about the bill itself and its political effect, but its main thing is the governor announced, and we're going to talk about it, a teacher pay proposal. He announced news about the budget. A lot of other news has happened. It just doesn't get front page coverage because it's this sort of media-led HB2 all the time kind of hysteria. Again, I agree with Chris about the process. I agree there are elements of the bill that can be looked at or changed or otherwise legislative action taken on them. But the level of hysteria whipped up about this, particularly people outside the state who have absolutely no idea what the bill is. They thought the bill did things that it did not do. They cited things. There were even businesses in North Carolina that thought they were being ordered to do something about their bathrooms, which was false and part of the hysteria.
And part of the problem here, just looking at it realistically, not disregarding the aspects of it as far as discrimination, is it happened at a relatively slow news time. There wasn't much else that was taking place. Is it going to take some sort of big event to get this off the front page?
Well, there is going to be budget and revenue numbers coming out. The legislative session will get close to starting. The governor will put out his budget. The legislature will respond. There'll be other matters. It will get less attention over time.
Dennis, you're shaking your head.
I respectfully disagree with my good friend John Hood, but I would say that this issue is going to continue to fester, continue to be a firestorm until the legislature does some substantial work on this bill. That'd be my...
And they will not do substantial work on this bill. The rural legislators, both Democrat and Republican, voted their district.
So what I hear y'all saying then is this isn't going away anytime soon. We're going to carry this into November, the general election.
I think it'll certainly be a campaign issue in November.
Yeah.
It'll be a campaign issue, but it will not be the main one.
Well, we thank you for watching NC Spin on the air or on YouTube. Here's a reminder, there's much more on our website, ncspin.com or NC Spin on Facebook. You'll find video footage not seen anywhere else, perspective pieces from our panel, and our weekly column. Get more balanced debate from the Old North State on ncspin.com, NC Spin on Facebook, or on Twitter at NC Spin Tweets. After we come back, we'll talk about teacher pay.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
Baseball players from other countries are considered guest workers here. Baseball, the previous administration and Congress cut a deal in 2006 allowing foreign players to travel freely across the country. Not so for agriculture guest workers. They're vilified for doing work Americans won't, and they face a mountain of red tape just to get here. Shouldn't American agriculture get the same consideration as baseball? Farm Bureau and Agriculture, we keep North Carolina growing.
1 in 5 North Carolinians can't buy healthy foods in their communities, increasing their risk of obesity, diabetes, heart disease, stroke, and some forms of cancer. It's time to invest in the Healthy Corner Store initiative. Visit ncallianceforhealth.org to learn more.
We now return to NC Spin.
With the legislature preparing for its short session that begins April 25th, Governor Pat McCrory said one of his top agenda items is to raise teacher pay approximately 5%. His proposals, he says, would raise the average teacher salary to about $50,000 from the current average of $43,900. His recommendations would add an additional $250 million to the state budget. Dennis, both House Speaker Moore and Senate President Pro Tem Berger responded by saying McCrory's proposals probably won't pass. You've been involved in putting budgets together. Was this just a political move, a starting point for compromise, or something that you think the governor might go to the wall over?
Well, I hope the governor fights for it. You know, we're in the high 40s in teacher pay now in the states, and the average teacher's pay nationally is about $57,000. And I was happy to see the governor put this initiative forward. I think it's been much needed debate on this. And our teachers are paid very little for what they do. And as you know, now North Carolina is known as, I think, 50th in the country and the worst place to come and teach. So I hope he can get the salaries up, because we need to keep retaining our best teachers and to recruit teachers. But I think the devil's in the details. What does it mean for state workers? Will they get a raise? I know we got somewhat of a surplus, but if there's enough money to go around. But there are other issues that need to be tackled as well, like teacher shortage, per pupil spending, public school safety, things like that. And I'm hoping that the governor will come forward with some of those initiatives.
Dovetailing on what Dennis was saying, if the legislature were to adopt the governor's proposal, it would cost $250 million. Now, from what we've seen to this point, it looks like the state will end up with about a $200 million budget surplus. But is that why perhaps Berger and Moore are not enthusiastic about this? It's going to eat up all the availability?
It will eat up the availability. For the Senate side, their focus has really been on tax cuts. They want to keep looking for ways that they can reduce taxes for North Carolinians. So that's something they always try to hold a pot of money to the side for. And then you have the dynamics of how the House and Senate negotiate with each other. They don't like to show their hands. When they're playing cards, they keep them very close to the vest. But the governor, again, has this wonderful opportunity. He comes out with his own budget. And I think he not only has the 5% teacher pay raise, but also the one-time bonuses, which is real money also. So all that put together lets him start the debate, and he comes with a balanced budget.
All right, let's assume, John, that we're not going to get what the governor proposed. What do you think it is likely that we will see so far as pay increases for teachers?
I think there'll be large pay increases.
Large?
Maybe not as large as the governor's proposal, but I wouldn't think radically smaller.
2-3%?
I think that on average, you're talking about something higher, in the 3 to 4 range, I think. I don't know. But I think the main issue in the legislature is not the amount. I think a lot of the lawmakers want to spend a significant amount of money on teacher compensation, just like the governor's proposing. They just may want to spend it differently. For example, they might want to continue to front load the permanent pay raises to the early career teachers where a lot of the teacher attrition occurs, and maybe change the way the bonuses
and
are
McCrory's
distributed.
proposal had this to the longest tenured, had a lot of this going to the longest tenured teachers who haven't seen much in recent years.
And I think that's, if there is a teacher pay raise, I hope there is, and I hope it's at least this large, if not larger. I think a significant portion has to go to veteran teachers who have they received a raise, but some of them have received barely a raise at all in the last few years. While we hear big numbers about the average raise, if you're not getting a raise, it doesn't mean much to you. I also think the legislature is not going to come anywhere near this amount if they have any inkling to cut taxes, which I think they do again, which is, I think will be a difference between the House and Senate, which we've seen before, although there were a lot of people, including most of the people on NC Spin, who thought they should have cut taxes last year until they saw how the 2013 tax cuts worked, and I think we're going to have that same debate this year, and I think the Senate wants to cut taxes again.
Dennis, there was a group called Schools Our Students Deserve that responded to the governor's proposal by saying, don't pay teachers any more money, instead take that money and put it back into classrooms with teachers' aides and textbooks and supplies and enrichment type of stuff to help improve our students' education. What do you think of that idea?
Well, I think it's for real. I mean, when this study came out that put us at 50th in attracting teachers to teach, the part of it was the working environment in which they're in, and that's what you're speaking about, is the things that they need to help them teach more effectively, and they're not getting it.
All right, Connie, trailing again on this subject, if they're not going to get 5%, teachers will get some percentage, but perhaps less. What does that mean for state employees who really haven't had any pay increases recently either? What can we expect there, do you think?
You know, that House and Senate actually has tried to be somewhat equitable there, but the cost when you add both the state employees and the teachers together is so large. Usually the state employees take it on the chin, and I don't think it'd be much different this year.
Unfortunately. All right, after these messages, we're going to talk about restoring jobless benefits.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
I help educate and inspire visually impaired students to strive for a brighter future.
I make sure visitors to the North Carolina Zoo take a walk on the wild side.
And I make sure that the fuel you buy is a quality product from pipeline to pump.
I support small businesses in North Carolina by matching them with hard-working, well-trained employees.
I make sure the roads you drive on are safe.
Scenic, the one voice speaking in support of the men and women who are making North Carolina great.
It's a fact, patients who receive care in the medical home from a trusted family physician reduce healthcare costs through prevention, early detection, and affordable management of high-cost chronic diseases.
Every dollar invested in healthcare matters. Let's invest them wisely, building on North Carolina's medical home model. Better health begins with a medical home, a trusted family physician, the best return on our healthcare investment. Learn about the importance of medical homes at ournchealthcare.com.
1 in 5 North Carolinians can't buy healthy foods in their communities, increasing their risk of obesity, diabetes, heart disease, stroke, and some forms of cancer. It's time to invest in the Healthy Corner Store initiative. Visit ncallianceforhealth.org to learn more.
You sleep on concrete till your body get immune to concrete.
My mom got my brother and I up and said, come on, we're leaving.
I became homeless in the beginning of this year.
When I was about 4 or 5 years old, our house caught fire.
I used to see my brother. If he see me, he'd turn and go the other direction.
We did the only thing that we could think of, and we went to a Salvation Army shelter.
You know, we don't have this, like, what's your background look like? We just say, what do you need?
I remember the man from the Salvation Army coming down with a box of clothes.
The Salvation Army officer bought my brother and I an ice cream cone.
Last week, my brother walked up to me, and he just started a conversation.
Today I've given my life to the Salvation Army because I remember what somebody did for me, my brother, and my mom over 30 years ago.
The Salvation Army for me means hope.
Compassion.
Family.
Support.
We now return to NC Spin.
During the Great Recession, North Carolina's Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund evaporated and had to borrow $2.5 billion from the federal government. At the time, qualifying unemployed workers would receive compensation for up to 26 weeks at up to $298 a week. Needing to fix it, the legislature determined to increase the amount employers pay into the fund, but they also cut benefits. Now, a qualifying unemployed worker only gets benefits up to 13 weeks for amounts up to $235 a week. The trust fund has now accumulated a cash balance of $1.2 billion, and advocates are saying the legislature should reverse these cuts or at least increase them. John, according to the NC Budget and Tax Center, North Carolina's dropped from 25th to 46th among the states in average weekly unemployment benefit. Is it time to reconsider the number of weeks and the amounts that we pay?
I think you could reconsider that at some point, but I don't think this is the right year for it. Eventually, you could adjust the amounts or the weeks, but I think we need to build additional reserves for a couple of reasons. First of all, the next recession is probably sooner rather than later, just by historical trends. We want to make sure we don't get it to the same position we had in the past, where precipitous declines in the balances to zero, then borrowing from the federal government results in a variety of problems that we have to work ourselves out of. So let's not have that pattern recur. The second thing is we need to look at how unemployment insurance interacts with all the other public assistance programs available. I hope in Washington, a new president and Congress will rethink the entire program and its design, because it is poorly designed to get people back to work quickly.
Chris, Governor McCrory wants to move this fund, bump this fund up to $2.4 billion instead of $1.2 billion. I guess my question is, why put money into a trust fund at this moment that's not collecting any interest for us or anything like that? Why not pay it out in benefits?
Well, I think we need to do both. And what's fascinating,
that was a softball question to you, by the way.
You know, we solved this. We paid back this debt for businesses in North Carolina two ways. Businesses paid more, and we cut benefits. Now the debt is paid back, and we're trying to build up the trust fund, and we're asking the workers to have dramatically reduced benefits while we've taken the extra burden off of businesses. I definitely think we need to do it. Another statistic in that report is I think it's only Florida. Is there a smaller percentage of people that are unemployed in a state that get unemployment insurance? So we're the stingiest state in terms of who gets it. We're the stingiest in how long people get it, and we're almost the stingiest in how much they get. Surely to goodness, we're a little better than that in North Carolina. We're still having big layoffs. The Eden beer place, the Freightliner, we're having a lot of people getting laid off, and I will dare say that some of those blue-collar workers are going to have a hard time within 13 weeks
well, let's talk about
finding
that.
A job.
Nationwide, 28% of all unemployed workers get benefits. Right. In North Carolina, that number is only 12%. Can anybody help me understand why the disparity between the national average and North Carolina?
Well, I think it's because we're one of the very few states that has 13 weeks of benefits versus 26, and our workers are going off of unemployment insurance much earlier than those around the country. And so as a result of that, we're not getting as much money to our workers as they are.
But I want to talk about what I was hearing from employers before there were adjustments made to the benefits. I was hearing from employers all over the state where people would come in and, unemployed would come in and say, hey, you don't have a job for me, do you? And leave because they just had
qualified.
That's exactly right. There were complaints all coming in all over the state. So there's actually a strong incentive to find work. They've beefed up workforce development, trying to connect the unemployed with jobs. So yeah, benefits may be down, but there's this other element that's
going. Are workers in North Carolina lazier than any other state in the country?
I don't know what the other states were doing, but
well,
I will tell you what.
The other states are all giving better benefits somehow.
I'm telling you what I was hearing before.
There is actually evidence North Carolina has been more effective recently in reducing fraud, and that would affect your rate of uptake. It isn't the whole explanation, but it's probably part of it.
All right.
I was going to say, I think that workers want to work. I think they want a job. Many of them took 26 weeks to get re-educated so they could realign with skill sets they need out there for the workforce. But that'll come, I hope.
All right, after these messages, we'll ask the panel to tell us something we don't know.
NC Spin is brought to you in part by the North Carolina Farm Bureau. The Farm Bureau and Agriculture. We keep North Carolina growing.
The cost of everything has gone up dramatically over the last 75 years. With one exception, keeping electricity affordable. That's the power of your co-op membership. Learn more at togetherwesave.com.
North Carolina's Touchstone Energy Cooperatives, looking out for you.
Baseball players from other countries are considered guest workers here. Baseball, the previous administration and Congress cut a deal in 2006 allowing foreign players to travel freely across the country. Not so for agriculture guest workers. They're vilified for doing work Americans won't, and they face a mountain of red tape just to get here. Shouldn't American agriculture get the same consideration as baseball? Farm Bureau and Agriculture, we keep North Carolina growing.
Whenever I go out, that your favorite part of the show is when we ask the panel to tell us something we don't know, and we're going to do it right now. Dennis Wicker, I'll start with you.
Tom, since 2008, our children that are living in poverty in North Carolina has grown by 25%. Almost 500,000 of our children, 1 in 4, live in poverty. This is a statistic that's going to reach back and bite us really hard in the next 10 to 20 years. And it has a direct impact on the health and the education of all these children. And I believe this is something the state has a black eye about, and we've got to get our arms around it.
John, tell us something we don't know.
I recently pulled together polling data from all the pollsters in North Carolina that study electoral trends over the last almost a year, looking at overall partisan preference between Republicans and Democrats if you include independents who lean one way or the other. Here's the average: 46% Republican, 44% Democrat, 10% swing. Basically a tie. We're a very competitive state going into November.
Chris, tell us something we don't know.
One of the education issues that hasn't gotten a lot of attention, there'll be legislation this session, I think, restricting the number of out-of-state people on charter school boards. Increasingly, charter schools are run by for-profit companies from other states. And it's gotten to where some charter schools have a majority or almost a majority of people making decisions about North Carolina taxpayer money who don't even live in North Carolina.
Connie, tell us something we don't know.
I represent the Ready Mix Association, and I started hearing from my members last month that they have been approached by coal ash wholesalers from China and India to purchase coal ash for concrete here in North Carolina because they can't get supplies in North Carolina of coal ash. So don't be surprised if we see it coming in on barges.
Interesting. Coal ash.
Coal ash because...
Since we already have a coal ash problem.
Duke Energy has to process it in a way that Ready Mix can use it, and Duke Energy would make money with it.
Well, you've heard our spin on the issues of the day. To stay informed all during the week, give your feedback, and read my weekly column, be sure to visit our website, ncspin.com, or catch NC Spin on Facebook. Next week, our good friend Doug Raymond is going to be sitting in this chair, and we'll have more balanced debate for the Old North State. Until then, stay informed and watch out for the spin.
Join us next week and get the spin on issues facing our state.